Well, seeing as I chose the first game I ever played for my first video, it only makes sense that my second be about the second game I ever played, right? Too bad I don't remember what that is. But I think Croc was one of the first games I played, so might as well go with that, right? What could possibly go wrong? So Croc, Legend of the Gobbos is a platforming game developed by Argonaut Games and published by Fox Interactive in 1997. It was released originally on the PlayStation 1 and later on Sega Saturn and Microsoft Windows. As with Bugs Bunny Lost in Time, I've only played the PS1 version, and so will only be talking about that version. Fun fact, this was actually pitched to Nintendo as a Yoshi game before being developed as an original IP. So you start up the game and get treated to a nice little intro. It's just another day in Gobboland, or whatever they call it, when all of a sudden this basket washes up. Everyone's curious, and then it turns out to contain a baby crocodile. Aww, look at the adorable little guy. But make no mistake, behind those lovable little eyes is nothing but pure evil. So the Gobbos teach little Yoshi, Croc, how to walk and jump and run, and then he ages up like they do in The Sims, and now he's Big Croc, but still little. Then this guy, big evil frogman over here, turns up and starts being a dick, capturing all the Gobbos. So Croc is sent away and now has to rescue the Gobbos and defeat the big evil frogman. I think non-verbal storytelling at its finest. So this is another 3D platformer. You control Croc and play through various levels, rescuing Gobbos along the way. Each level is divided into several smaller areas, and the game itself is divided into sections, with several levels and boss fights each. Croc can run, jump, climb on obstacles, tail whip enemies, do a butt drop to break open crates, climb up certain walls and along the bottoms of grates, and later he can swim. Oh god, the swimming. So not as many abilities as Bugs Bunny, but this is a slightly older game, so we can expect it to be a little more basic. The main goal of each level is to simply reach the end. Once you see that gong, just run up and hit it with your tail and there you go. You don't even have to rescue the Gobbos if you don't want to. All you need to do to move from one level to the next is to reach the gong. It's not like how it is in Lost in Time where you need to collect the clocks and carrots to unlock more levels. In fact, you can skip pretty much half the game if you want. Don't feel like completing that challenge? Then don't. In addition to the Gobbos, you can collect other things like crystals, keys and extra lives. The keys are used to unlock doors to progress to other areas, or unlock cages that contain Gobbos and other useful objects. You can also collect coloured crystals, which, once you have all 5, unlock an optional bonus area. There's also secret areas hidden away in some levels where you can acquire extra lives. Now, you may be thinking, this game doesn't look like much. It seems pretty harmless with its bright visuals, upbeat music and cute and lovable main character. But you be wrong. Dead wrong. Why? Because this game is fucking brutal! Seriously! Fuck! For fuck's sake! How here, man! Oh, come on! Oh, man! Fuck! Oh my god! Ah!
This is brutal. I didn't think things would be like this.
I'm being completely serious when I say I haven't known many games be this unforgiving. And most of the ones I do come from a certain developer for whom brutal and unforgiving is kind of their thing. So what exactly makes this game so hard? Well, how about the fact that everything kills you in one hit? You don't have any health. One hit from anything and you drop down dead. Unless you're carrying crystals, then you drop those instead. But if you haven't got any, then death can strike at literally any moment. The enemies don't even have to hit you to kill you. They only have to touch you and you're dead. On top of that, your platforming skills have to be on fucking point here. Every jump needs to be precise. You land too close to an edge, you fly off to your death. You hit a ledge at a slightly wonky angle, Croc doesn't grab on and you fall to your death. Again, and again, and again. But all this is just the tip of the iceberg. This game is flawed, very much so. How, you ask? Well, basically, you know all the complaints I made about the controls in Bugs Bunny Lost in Time? Well, I take them all back. Compared to this, Bugs Bunny Lost in Time is like... I don't know. What's the best 3D platformer ever made? The controls in this game are horrible. Bugs Bunny moves as smooth as butter over a baby's arse compared to this shit. Croc moves like a fucking tank. Seriously, whenever I'm trying to turn a corner or move around something, it feels like I'm steering an 18-wheeler. And when I'm moving him backwards, it feels like I'm backing up a forklift truck. Movement just feels so heavy and slow and the controls are so clunky, meaning that before virtually every jump you have to stop and make sure Croc is facing the exact direction you want him to go in. If you don't plan every jump perfectly, there's a good chance you'll miss your mark and end up getting yourself killed. Same goes for grabbing onto ledges. You hit it at slightly the wrong angle, Croc doesn't grab on, and you get the idea. Again, this means you have to move slowly and deliberately a lot of the time, which takes a lot of the fun out of the platforming. And I wouldn't mind quite so much if there weren't bits that force you to move fast.
Fucking ghost piece of shit!
Now, you can control Croc when he's in the air, which did save me a lot of the times when I executed a less than perfect jump, but that only goes so far. For every time it did help me, there were plenty of times where it didn't. You've also got to be careful with distances too. Just like with angles, you've got to stop and judge every distance before you jump, otherwise you'll probably end up overshooting or falling short. And remember when I complained about bugs jumping automatically when he touches an edge? Well, forget about that. The times where it fucked me up were annoying, but it prevented way more problems than it caused. Croc doesn't jump automatically when he touches an edge, and that means once again you have to stop and time all your jumps perfectly, because if you're trying to move fast and try to jump from the edge of a platform, Croc won't jump and will instead just fly off to his death. Ultimately, even though it can be irritating when it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, I think I much prefer a game with this feature than without. Did I mention you start with only 3 lives? Yeah, and every time you die, you lose a life. And if you lose all of them, then it's game over and you've got to start the level all over again. And believe me, you're going to be seeing this screen a lot. Almost as much as this one. The camera sucks too. There were plenty of times where it would go all screwy when I went to a certain area because it didn't know what to do with itself. You don't have much control over it. You can use the triggers to pull the camera back behind Croc, but there were lots of times where it would get stuck. Like when you're near a wall or a door and you can't see where you're jumping, so you kind of just have to make a leap of faith and hope that you don't get yourself killed. Alright, so I've whined enough. Let's just see if I can get through this. So the game is split into several sections, or islands, with a bunch of levels in each. You start in the, I don't know, the green foresty one. Here the difficulty isn't so bad, and it's where the game lures you into its trap, lulling you into a false sense of security. As mentioned earlier, your main goal is to reach the end of the level, rescuing any Gobbos you come across. You'll find some perched on platforms, while others are hidden in crates, and some are locked in cages that you need to find keys to open. Yeah, I know man, I'm coming. Most levels have 6 Gobbos to find, one of which will always be in the bonus area that you unlock by finding all the coloured crystals. Every once in a while, evil nasty frogman uses some magic bullshit to turn innocent little creatures into slightly larger creatures for you to fight. There's 2 boss fights for every island. The boss fights are nothing to write home about. They all follow the same basic formula. You just let them chase you around and avoid their attacks. Then when they stop for a moment, you run up and hit them with your tail. Do that a couple times and you win. Now to be fair, some do have unique characteristics, like the boss who multiplies every time you hit him, and some do change up their attacks, but in the end, it doesn't make much difference. After the forest island comes the snow island. Here the game gets a bit more tricky, but it's still manageable. Now you've got ice to slip around on, just to make movement even more cumbersome, and some platforms and land masses have sloped edges, meaning that if your jump isn't totally precise, you can slide off and die. I wouldn't mind any of this so much if it weren't for the aforementioned control issues. I don't mind hard games at all, but what I do mind is when half the challenge comes from flaws in the game's fundamental design. You come across a few more oddities in this section too. As I said earlier, you can find secret areas that let you acquire extra lives, but to get to some of them you have to jump on platforms that are hidden over the edges of cliffs. And you either have to be really precise or just really lucky to land on them, and in the end you'll probably end up losing more lives trying to land on the platforms than you'll gain from the sections themselves. This is also where you encounter the first swimming section. All I can say is I can't fault the game for its ambition. Yeah, these kinds of things we take for granted in games now, but back then this would have been a lot harder to pull off. It's just a shame that Croc handles just as well in water as he does on dry land. I thought crocodiles were supposed to be good swimmers. At least these sections are pretty short though. There's also some mini games. Most of these you come across in the bonus areas after collecting the coloured crystals. Now, I can cut most of the stuff in this game some slack, like the difficulty and the controls. Maybe I'm being a little harsh, but these mini games, fuck them, I hate them. They force you to move fast and accurately in a game where that is extremely difficult to do. Like the crystal collecting challenge, where you have to jump on buttons to move the cauldron to catch the fallen crystals. But like I said, you have to move fast and accurately to land on the correct button in time, and then get off the button again before you move the cauldron past the place you want it. And that's easier said than done because Croc moves so slow and the controls are so clumsy. And if you miss a single one, you fail, and you don't even get to try again, unless you kill yourself and waste your lives. Otherwise, you have to play through the whole level again, so it's hard to even get a feel for the challenge and work out the best strategy for beating it. And it's not like these levels are huge, most of them take a few minutes if you're quick, but when you're having to go through some of them over and over again just to do these stupid challenges, it does become frustrating. So you fuck up a couple more bosses and then it's onto the desert section, and here's where the game springs its trap. Up to this point, the game was tricky but manageable, but here the difficulty shoots right up and gets a lot more frustrating. I was finding myself becoming less and less sympathetic to the plight of the Gobbos. Jumps just suddenly feel a lot more difficult to land, there's a lot more sloped edges making it easier to slip off and die, areas you have to traverse in darkness, more timed platforms that force you to move fast, fucking tornadoes that pick you up and throw you to your death, and bonus challenges where you have to race through dark areas with smaller platforms where it's harder to judge distances. And again, if you fail, you have to go through the whole level again. Life's a beach? Nah mate, the word you're looking for is fucking cunt. So let's take a time out to talk about the things in this game that I actually do like. Well, it turns out most of those things lie in the presentation side. I do like the graphics. They're bright and colourful and surprisingly detailed. Obviously they're nowhere near as good as what we expect today, but there are actually a couple impressive little details for a game of this time. Like the fact that Croc leaves behind footprints in snow and sand, and that fire and lava casts a warm orange glow over him. Things like these we expect as standard in games today, but for back then they're pretty impressive and a nice touch. But honestly, I think the best part of the game, and the main reason why I and others remember it so fondly, is Croc himself. He's just so endearing in his cuteness, and his innate charm is probably the only reason why I don't outright hate this game. His sound effects are pretty adorable too. I like the music as well. It's upbeat and catchy, and each area has its own distinct style. I particularly like the music from the winter levels and the swimming sections. And while the gameplay isn't stellar, I did enjoy the level design. It's not completely linear, but not confusing either. And while the gameplay doesn't really change much, most of the levels do find ways to keep the challenge from becoming repetitive. Frustrating as they might be. I'll also take this opportunity to admit that I am being pretty hard on this game. It's not a bad game, it's actually quite fun, for the most part. It's just that the flaws I've mentioned can really drag it down at times, particularly in the second half, which does sour the experience, which is a shame. So after the desert section, you arrive at Evil Frogman's castle, which forms the final section of the game. Here you have to deal with some of the game's hardest levels, like the dungeon level, which is just full of the bastard fucking mini-games from earlier. And again, if you fuck up once, you have to do the whole fucking level again. There's also this weird bit where Croc has to jump on an air pump to blow up this balloon guy, who sounds pretty scared. Until he pops. So, Croc just murdered a guy? And then you've got to deal with this bullshit. This giant blue fucker banging his fucking hammer and making the fucking platforms flip over. Seriously, fuck this shit. If I never play this fucking level again, it'll be too fucking soon. So then you reach the final boss, which is Evil Frogman. Yes, I know his name's Baron Dante. Whatever. So you beat him and then you rescue King Fucko, and there you go. Croc saves the day. Back in Gobboland, everyone is grateful. They build a giant statue in Croc's honour and they all live happily ever after. Or do they? Turns out they don't show you the real ending, where they make Croc their new leader and then he develops a god complex and turns into a murderous tyrant, slaughtering all those who refuse to bow down to him. All hail the almighty Croc. May his reign be long and glorious. So that's Croc, Legend of the Gobbos. Or is it? Wait, what? Turns out no. Why? Because turns out I told a little fib. You know when I said you don't actually have to save the Gobbos? Well, you don't to get through the main game, but if you rescue all of them, then that unlocks a couple secret bonus levels in each section. In these, you don't rescue Gobbos. Instead, you have to find the jigsaw piece. And once you've got all the jigsaw pieces, you unlock one final section. The crystal section. This is basically just a greatest hits of all the previous areas. And when I say greatest hits, I mean the most annoying fucking bits. So when you finally beat all that, you come to the secret final boss, who's just a big evil frog man made out of crystal. Beat him by getting the 4 gongs all ringing at the same time and there you go. You're finally done. So in conclusion, Croc is an ambitious but flawed and frustrating game whose flaws are mostly offset by its lovable main character. If either the controls were better implemented or the difficulty was toned down a bit, this would have been a much more enjoyable experience. But in all honesty, most of the goodwill I have towards this game is down to Croc himself, and if it weren't for him, I'd probably hate it and have no desire to play it ever again. The game does have its following, but it never became a big or successful franchise. There was a sequel in 1999 which we might get to someday, and plans for a third entry on the original Xbox that ended up not happening. Now, Argonaut and Fox Interactive are no more, so it looks like we won't be seeing another outing for our favourite baby crocodile, which is a shame. I would love to see a Croc game on modern consoles, or even a remake of this one that addresses all of its issues. So it's been over 25 years since Croc's last game, meaning that he'll be all grown up. I wonder what old Croc's up to now. Oh dear. So that was a lot harder than I'd anticipated, but at least it gave me plenty to talk about. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, then please like and subscribe, and I hopefully will see you in the next video. Thanks again.